The galactic stage. In the vast expanse of the Milky Way, countless civilizations had risen and fallen, their legacies etched into the cosmic tapestry. Among these, the Galactic Concordat stood as a beacon of cooperation and progress, uniting thousands of species across millions of worlds. For centuries, they had weathered the storms of interstellar politics, technological revolutions, and occasional conflicts. But now, a shadow loomed over this grand alliance. The Void Dominion, a ruthless collective of species driven by a zealous belief in their manifest destiny to rule the galaxy, had emerged from the Outer Rim. Their fleets, powered by dark matter technology, cut through Concordat defenses like a scythe through wheat. World after world fell, either subjugated or obliterated, as the Dominion's crusade of conquest spread like a cancer across the galactic arm. Amidst this chaos, one species remained conspicuously absent from the conflict: humanity. Earth and its colonies, collectively known as the Terran Federation, had long been an enigma to the galactic community. Discovered centuries ago by Concordat explorers, humans had politely but firmly rejected all invitations to join the Interstellar Alliance. They maintained cordial trade relations and cultural exchanges, but steadfastly refused to engage in military pacts or political alliances. This isolationist stance had earned humanity a reputation for being aloof, even arrogant. Many in the Concordat viewed the Terrans as naive idealists, content to hide behind their borders while the rest of the galaxy burned. Little did they know that this perception was about to be shattered. On the Concordat capital world of Nexus Prime, the Grand Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered in the massive amphitheater, their forms as diverse as the planets they hailed from. Some were hulking creatures of living stone, others delicate beings of pure energy, but all shared the same look of grim determination. High Counselor Jorax, a towering insectoid with iridescent wings, called the session to order. His mandibles clicked with anxiety as he addressed the assembly. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, his translator rendering his chittering speech into the standard galactic tongue, "the situation grows dire. The Zenith system has fallen to the Void Dominion. Our fleets are in retreat across a dozen sectors. If we do not find a way to turn the tide, the Concordat will be nothing but a memory within a standard solar cycle." Murmurs of dismay rippled through the gathering. Zenith had been home to some of the Concordat's most advanced shipyards. Its loss was a crippling blow. "What of the Arcturian defense grid?" asked Counselor Lyra, her holographic form shimmering with concern. "Surely it can halt the Dominion's advance." Jorax's antennae drooped. "The grid has been compromised. Our analysts believe the Dominion has developed a way to subvert its control systems. We can no longer rely on it." The news sent shockwaves through the assembly. The Arcturian grid had been their ace in the hole, a network of automated fortresses and weaponized singularities that had defended the Concordat's core worlds for millennia. "Then we are doomed," rasped Counselor Crix, a being of living plasma contained within an ornate environmental suit. "Our forces are stretched thin, our resources depleted. What hope do we have against an enemy that can neutralize our greatest defenses?" A tense silence fell over the chamber. The weight of impending defeat pressed down on every being present. It was then that Counselor Ilara, representative of the enigmatic Aetheri, spoke up. "There is one option we have not yet explored," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "One potential ally we have long overlooked." Jorax's compound eyes fixed on the ethereal being. "Speak plainly, Counselor. We have no time for riddles." Ilara's form pulsed with determination. "Humanity. The Terran Federation." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices. Some scoffed at the idea, others expressed cautious interest. Jorax raised all four of his arms, calling for order. "The humans?" he asked, incredulity evident in his tone. "They have rebuffed every attempt at alliance for centuries. What makes you think they would aid us now?" Ilara's response was calm but firm. "Because they must. Because if the Concordat falls, they will be next. and because I believe we have never truly understood their potential. Counselor Crix's containment suit glowed an angry red. Potential. They are barely more than savages. Their technology is centuries behind ours. What could they possibly offer against the might of the Void Dominion? That is where you are wrong, Ilara countered. I have studied the humans extensively. Their apparent technological lag is a facade. They have been hiding their true capabilities, developing in isolation. I believe they possess advancements that could turn the tide of this war. The council chamber buzzed with speculation. Jorax leaned forward, his interest piqued. What evidence do you have of this, Counselor? Ilara's form shimmered as she projected a series of images into the center of the chamber. They showed glimpses of human ships with designs unlike anything the Concordat had seen, weapons that defied known physics, and planetary defenses that put the Arcturian grid to shame. These images were captured by deep cover agents over the past decade, Ilara explained. The humans have been preparing for a conflict of this scale for generations. They anticipated a threat like the Void Dominion long before we did. The council was stunned into silence. If what Ilara said was true, humanity could indeed be the key to their salvation. But one question remained. If the humans possess such power, Jorax asked, why have they not used it? Why remain isolated while the galaxy burns? Ilara's response was solemn. Because they fear themselves more than they fear any external threat. Humanity's history is stained with the blood of countless wars. They isolated themselves not out of arrogance, but out of a deep-seated fear of the destruction they could unleash upon the galaxy. The implications of this revelation settled heavily upon the Council. They had misjudged humanity, perhaps catastrophically so. Then how do you propose we convince them to join our cause? Counselor Lyra asked. If they are so determined to remain apart, what could possibly change their minds? Ilara's form pulsed with a mix of determination and regret. We must force their hand. We must make them understand that their isolation is no longer an option, that the threat of the Void Dominion outweighs their fears of self. Jorax chittered thoughtfully. You speak of manipulation, of dragging an unwilling species into our war. I speak of survival, Ilara countered. Ours and theirs. The Void Dominion will not stop with the Concordat. Earth will fall as surely as any of our worlds if we do not stand united. A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the council weighed their options. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the path forward was fraught with moral peril. Finally, Jorax spoke. We have no choice. Prepare a delegation to Earth immediately. Use whatever means necessary to secure humanity's involvement. The survival of the Concordat, of all free species, depends on it. As the council adjourned, a sense of desperate hope permeated the air. They were about to awaken a sleeping giant, to unleash a force they barely understood. Little did they know that their actions would reshape the very fabric of galactic civilization. On Earth, blissfully unaware of the storm about to break upon them, humanity went about its daily life. In the halls of power, in secret bunkers deep beneath the surface, the leaders of the Terran Federation monitored the galactic conflict with growing unease. They knew their time of isolation was coming to an end. The stage was set. The players were moving into position, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when humanity finally stepped onto the cosmic stage. Desperation's gambit. The Terran delegation arrived on Earth with little fanfare, their sleek diplomatic vessel touching down at the new Geneva spaceport under the cover of night. To casual observers, it might have seemed like any other visit from the Galactic Concordat, a routine matter of trade or cultural exchange. But the tension in the air was palpable as the alien diplomats were whisked away to the heart of the Terran Federation's government complex. Inside the cavernous assembly hall, the atmosphere was electric. Representatives from every human colony world had gathered, their faces grim with the weight of the moment. At the center of it all stood President Adira Chen, her silver hair and piercing gaze a stark contrast to the ornate chamber around her. As the Concordat delegation entered, led by the ethereal form of Counselor Ilara, a hush fell over the assembly. President Chen stepped forward, her voice steady as she addressed the visitors. "Welcome to Earth, representatives of the Galactic Concordat. We've been monitoring the situation with the Void Dominion. I assume that's why you're here." Ilara's form shimmered with a mix of hope and desperation. "Indeed, Madam President, the situation has become dire. We come to you in our hour of need to ask for humanity's aid in this conflict." A murmur rippled through the human delegates. For centuries, they had maintained their isolation, building their strength in secret. Now, the moment they had both prepared for and dreaded had finally arrived. President Chen's expression remained neutral. "We appreciate your situation, Counselor. But as you know, the Terran Federation has a long-standing policy of non-intervention in galactic affairs. Our isolation has served us well." Ilara's form pulsed with urgency. "With all due respect, Madam President, that isolation is a luxury you can no longer afford. The Void Dominion grows stronger with each world they conquer. If the Concordat falls, Earth will be next." "We are well aware of the threat," Chen replied, her tone sharpening. "But we are also aware of the cost of war. Humanity has paid that price many times over in our history. We will not rush headlong into another conflict." It was then that Jorax, who had been silently observing, stepped forward. His massive insectoid form loomed over the human delegates, but there was no menace in his stance, only desperation. "We understand your reluctance," he chittered, his translator conveying the gravity in his voice. "But we have seen glimpses of your true capabilities. The technologies you've developed in secret. You have the power to turn the tide of this war." A tense silence fell over the chamber. The humans exchanged uneasy glances. Their greatest secret, the true extent of their technological advancement, was out in the open. President Chen's eyes narrowed. "And how, exactly, did you come by this information?" Ilara stepped in smoothly. "We have our methods, Madam President, but that's not important now. What matters is that you have the power to save countless lives, to preserve the freedom of the galaxy." Chen's voice was ice. "What matters is that you've been spying on us, violating our sovereignty. And now you have the audacity to demand our help." The Concordat delegates shifted uncomfortably. They had known this wouldn't be easy, but the humans' resistance was stronger than they had anticipated. It was then that Admiral Marcus Reeves, the grizzled head of Terran Fleet Command, spoke up. "Madam President, if I may, perhaps we should hear them out. The threat is real, and if our secret is already compromised." Chen held up a hand, silencing him. She turned back to the alien delegation, her expression unreadable. "You say you need our help, but I suspect you're not here just to ask nicely. What exactly are you proposing?" Ilara and Jorax exchanged a look. This was the moment of truth. Ilara's form pulsed with resolve as she spoke. "We propose a full military alliance, immediate integration of Terran forces into the Concordat fleet, sharing of all relevant technologies and strategic information." The human delegates erupted in protest. It was one thing to offer aid, quite another to surrender their independence so completely. President Chen raised her voice over the din. "And if we refuse?" Jorax's mandibles clicked ominously. "Then we would be forced to take alternative measures." The implication hung heavy in the air. The Concordat was desperate enough to consider force, to drag humanity into the war whether they wanted it or not. President Chen's eyes flashed with anger. "Is that a threat, Counselor?" "It's a reality," Ilara interjected, her tone somber. "The Void Dominion must be stopped. If Earth will not willingly join the fight, we will have no choice but to compel your participation, for the greater good of the galaxy." The assembly hall erupted into chaos. Human delegates shouted accusations of blackmail and coercion. The Concordat representatives tried to speak over the din, their pleas for understanding lost in the uproar. In the midst of it all, President Chen stood silent, her mind racing. She had always known this day might come, had prepared for it. But the reality was far more complex than any simulation or war game. As the shouting reached a fever pitch, Chen's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Enough. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the Terran leader. Her face was a mask of resolve as she addressed the assembly. It seems we have no choice. The galaxy is at war, and we can no longer stand apart from it. She turned to the Concordat delegation. We will join your fight against the Void Dominion, but on our terms. Ilara's form brightened with hope. Of course, Madam President, whatever you need. Chen cut her off. What we need is for you to understand exactly what you're unleashing. Humanity has spent centuries preparing for this moment, honing our skills, developing technologies you can scarcely imagine. We've stayed isolated not out of fear or arrogance, but because we understood the devastation we could wreak if provoked. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. You think you're recruiting an ally, but what you're really doing is opening Pandora's box. And I promise you, the galaxy will never be the same. The Concordat delegates exchanged uneasy glances. They had come seeking aid, but the steel in Chen's voice made them wonder if they had miscalculated badly. Now, Chen continued, her tone brooking no argument. Let's discuss the specifics of this alliance. I warn you, you may not like all of our conditions. As the negotiations began in earnest, a sense of fateful change settled over the assembly hall. Humanity was about to step onto the galactic stage, and the universe would tremble at their arrival. In distant star systems, Void Dominion fleets continued their relentless advance, unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon. The tides of war were about to shift, and the true power of humanity was about to be unleashed upon an unsuspecting galaxy. The gambit of desperation had worked, but at what cost? Only time would tell if the Concordat's decision to force humanity's hand would be their salvation or their doom. Unleashing the storm. The galaxy held its breath as news of humanity's entry into the war spread like wildfire across the stars. In Void Dominion war rooms, strategists scrambled to assess this new threat. In Concordat refuges, a spark of hope flickered to life, but none truly understood the magnitude of what was about to unfold. On Earth, the gears of war ground into motion with terrifying efficiency. President Chen stood in the Global Command Center, surrounded by holograms depicting fleets and battle lines across the galaxy. Her voice was steady as she addressed the assembled military leadership. Operation Thunderbolt begins now. All units commence deployment. Across the Sol system and beyond, hidden shipyards burst into life. Massive doors in asteroid belts slid open, revealing fleets that had been built in secret over centuries. On Mars, entire mountain ranges shimmered and vanished, exposing sprawling military complexes. From gas giant moons and distant Kuiper Belt objects, ships of impossible design emerged from cloaked hangars. The Terran war machine had awakened, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Reeves stood at Chen's side, his weathered face set in grim determination. Madam President, the Phantom Fleet is away. ETA to the Zenith system is 3 hours. Chen nodded, her eyes fixed on the strategic display. And the Concordat, still assembling their forces. They'll be at least 12 hours behind us. A thin smile crossed Chen's face. Good. Let's show them what humanity can do. In the Zenith system, Void Dominion forces had settled into their conquest. The once bustling shipyards now churned out vessels for the invaders' fleet. Planetary defense systems, subverted and controlled by Dominion I, stood silent vigil. It was into this seeming security that humanity struck its first blow. Without warning, space itself seemed to tear open. Where there had been nothing but empty void, suddenly a fleet of sleek, dark ships materialized. Their hulls seemed to drink in light, making them hard for even advanced sensors to track. Aboard the Dominion command ship, alarms blared. Fleet Commander Vexlar, a being of writhing tendrils and glowing eyes, roared in confusion. What is the meaning of this? Where did they come from? His subordinates scrambled for answers, but before they could respond, the human fleet opened fire. Beams of coherent dark matter lanced out, cutting through Dominion shields as if they weren't there. Swarms of semi-autonomous drones, each barely larger than a fighter, swarmed capital ships, their weapons reconfiguring on the fly to exploit any weakness. And at the heart of the human formation, a massive vessel unlike any other began to glow with eldritch energy. The Concordat had glimpsed human technology, but this was beyond anything they had imagined. Aboard the TSS Nemesis, Fleet Admiral Sarah Zhao watched the battle unfold with cool detachment. Her voice was calm as she issued orders. Graviton Lance is charged. Target their command ship and fire. A beam of distorted spacetime erupted from the Nemesis, twisting reality itself as it struck the Dominion flagship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash, the massive vessel imploded, crushed by its own manipulated mass. The battle for Zenith was over almost before it began. In less than an hour, the system that had taken the Void Dominion weeks to conquer was back in Concordat hands. As reports of the victory reached Nexus Prime, the Concordat leadership was stunned. High Counselor Jorax's mandibles clicked rapidly as he addressed his fellow leaders. Is this accurate? The humans retook Zenith in under an hour. Counselor Ilara's form pulsed with a mix of awe and unease. It appears so, and reports are coming in of similar lightning strikes across 3 other sectors. The humans are moving faster than we ever thought possible. Jorax's compound eyes narrowed. How? Their ships seem to appear out of nowhere, strike with impossible force, and vanish again. What kind of technology are we dealing with? Before anyone could respond, a communication request chimed. It was from the Terran flagship. Admiral Zhou's hologram materialized in the council chamber, her expression neutral. Counselors, I trust you've received news of our progress. Jorax managed to collect himself. Indeed, Admiral. Your forces have achieved remarkable success. But how? Zhou cut him off. That's classified. What you need to know is that we've opened a path to the Dominion's core worlds. Your fleets can follow in our wake, securing the liberated systems. We'll continue to spearhead the assault. The Concordat leaders exchanged uneasy glances. This was not how they had envisioned the alliance working. Humanity was not just participating in the war. They were dominating it. Counselor Crix spoke up, his containment suit glowing an agitated orange. Now see here, Admiral. We appreciate your assistance, but we must coordinate our efforts. The Concordat has protocols, strategies. With all due respect, Counselor, Zhou interrupted, her tone ice. Your strategies led you to the brink of defeat. Ours are working. Unless you'd prefer we withdraw and let you handle things. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but clear. The Concordat had forced humanity into this war. Now they would have to accept the consequences of that decision. Jorax's antennae drooped in resignation. Of course not. Admiral, please, continue your operations. We'll follow your lead. As Zhou's hologram winked out, a heavy silence fell over the council chamber. They had gotten what they wanted, humanity's full participation in the war. But the price was becoming clear. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and they were no longer in control. Back on the Nemesis, Zhou turned to her executive officer. Status of Operation Stormbreaker. The XO's voice was crisp. On schedule. Admiral, the Void Dominion's home system will be in range in 72 hours. Zhou nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Excellent. It's time to end this war. As the Terran fleets continued their relentless advance, the true scope of humanity's power began to dawn on the galaxy. They had not merely joined the war. They had fundamentally changed its nature. The Void Dominion, once seemingly unstoppable, found itself on the defensive for the first time. Their conquered worlds fell one by one, liberated by forces they could barely comprehend, let alone combat. And in the wake of the human advance, the Concordats scrambled to keep up. They had unleashed a force beyond their control, and now they could only watch as humanity rewrote the rules of galactic warfare. The storm had been unleashed, and nothing would ever be the same again. Tables turned. The Void Dominion's central command complex on Umbra Prime was a fortress of dark energy and twisted spacetime, thought to be impregnable. For centuries, it had stood as a symbol of the Dominion's power and technological supremacy. Now, it burned. Supreme Overlord Nixthoth, the living embodiment of the Dominion's conquering spirit, watched in disbelief as human forces tore through defenses that had withstood the combined might of 100 alien races. His many eyes, usually alight with cruel intelligence, now flickered with an unfamiliar emotion. Fear. Impossible, he hissed, his voice a cacophony of discordant frequencies. How can they breach our quantum barriers? How do they resist our mind control fields? His subordinates had no answers. The humans moved like ghosts, their technology defying known laws of physics. Where the Dominion employed brute force and overwhelming numbers, the Terrans struck with surgical precision and weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. As alarms blared and the fortress shook with the impact of human weaponry, Nixthoth made a decision that would have been unthinkable mere weeks ago. "Prepare my escape vessel," he commanded. "We must regroup and—" His words were cut short as the chamber's massive doors imploded, crushed by an invisible force. Through the debris strode a squad of human soldiers, their powered armor making them seem more machine than flesh. At their head was a figure that radiated authority and lethal grace. Fleet Admiral Sarah Zhao removed her helmet, her eyes locking with Nixthoth's many orbs. "Supreme Overlord," she said, her voice calm but laced with steel. "In the name of the Terran Federation and the Galactic Concordat, I'm here to accept your unconditional surrender." Nixthoth's form writhed with rage and disbelief. "Surrender? To you? We are the Void Dominion. We do not." His tirade was cut short as Zhao raised a small device. With a soft hum, Nixthoth found himself unable to move, trapped in a localized time dilation field. "Your reign of terror is over," Zhao stated flatly. "The choice now is simple. Surrender and face justice, or be obliterated. Humanity has no patience for empires built on the suffering of others." As the human forces secured the Dominion leadership, news of the Umbra Prime's fall spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. In a matter of hours, the war that had seemed unwinnable was effectively over. On Nexus Prime, the Concordat's capital, the mood was one of jubilation tinged with unease. High Counselor Jorax addressed the assembled representatives, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "Today we celebrate a great victory," he began. "The Void Dominion, which threatened to engulf us all, has been defeated, and we owe this triumph to our allies, the humans of Earth." A cheer went up from the gathered delegates, but it was noticeably subdued. Jorax continued, his compound eyes scanning the crowd. "However, we must now address the Goliath in the room. The humans have demonstrated power beyond anything we imagined. Power that, frankly, concerns us deeply." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Counselor Ilara floated forward, her ethereal form pulsing with concern. "We forced them into this conflict," she reminded the gathering. "We manipulated them, threatened them, and now we fear the consequences of our actions." Counselor Crix's containment suit glowed an agitated red. "We had no choice. The Dominion would have destroyed us all. But now we may have traded one threat for another." The chamber erupted into heated debate. Some argued for immediately trying to contain human expansion. Others advocated for closer ties, hoping to guide humanity's newfound galactic role. A few even suggested a preemptive strike to neutralize the Terran threat before it could fully materialize. It was into this chaos that a new hologram materialized in the center of the chamber. President Adira Chen, flanked by Admiral Zhao and other human leaders, gazed calmly at the startled Concordat representatives. "Counselors," Chen began, her voice cutting through the din. I believe we need to talk. Jorax's antennae twitched nervously. Madam President, we were just discussing the post-war situation. Chen's smile was devoid of warmth. Yes, I imagine you were. Discussing how to deal with the humans now that we've served our purpose, perhaps. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Chen continued, her tone measured but firm. Let me be clear. Humanity did not want this war. You dragged us into it. We fought it on our terms, and now we'll dictate the peace on our terms as well. Protests began to rise, but Chen raised a hand, silencing them. We have no interest in conquering or subjugating anyone. That's not our way. But neither will we return to isolation. The galaxy is our home now, too, and we intend to have a say in its future. She paused, letting her words sink in. We're prepared to help rebuild, to share some of our technology for peaceful purposes. But understand this, any attempt to constrain us, to treat us as a threat to be managed, will be met with displeasure. The implications hung heavy in the air. The Concordat had seen what human displeasure could do to an enemy. Jorax stepped forward, his voice surprisingly steady. What exactly are you proposing, Madam President? Chen's expression softened slightly. A new galactic order. One where humanity takes its place as an equal partner, not a tool to be used and discarded. We'll help maintain peace, foster scientific exchange, and stand ready to defend against any future threats. But we'll do so as free agents, not as anyone's puppet or enforcer. The Concordat leaders exchanged glances. It was clear they had little choice. Humanity held all the cards now. Ilara's form brightened slightly. Perhaps this is an opportunity. We misjudged you once, forced you into a role you didn't want. Maybe now we can truly get to know you, to build something greater together. Chen nodded, a genuine smile touching her lips for the first time. That's our hope as well, Counselor. We've seen the worst of what the galaxy has to offer. Now let's see if we can bring out the best in each other. As the human delegation began outlining their vision for a new galactic alliance, the mood in the chamber slowly shifted from fear to cautious optimism. The Concordat had indeed miscalculated badly in forcing humanity's hand, but in doing so, they had unknowingly opened the door to a future brighter than any they could have imagined. The tables had turned, but perhaps, just perhaps, it was for the best. A new galactic order. 5 years had passed since the fall of the Void Dominion, and the galaxy was a changed place. The great hall of the newly christened Galactic Alliance on Nexus Prime buzzed with activity as representatives from 100 worlds gathered for the annual summit. At the center of it all stood President Adira Chen, now serving as the Alliance's first human chairperson. Her silver hair had a few more streaks of white, but her eyes were as sharp as ever as she called the session to order. Friends, colleagues, fellow sentients, she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. 5 years ago, we stood on the brink of annihilation. Today, we stand united, stronger than ever before. A murmur of agreement rippled through the gathered delegates. Chen continued, her tone both proud and cautionary. We've achieved much in these years. The reconstruction of worlds devastated by the Dominion is ahead of schedule. Our combined scientific endeavors have yielded breakthroughs in medicine, energy production, and space travel. The galaxy is experiencing an unprecedented era of peace and prosperity. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. But we must not become complacent. There are still challenges to face, wounds to heal, and trust to be built. In the front row, High Counselor Jorax nodded solemnly. The insectoid leader had become one of humanity's strongest allies in the new order, working tirelessly to bridge the gap between Earth and the older galactic civilizations. Madam Chairperson speaks wisely. Jorax chittered, his translator conveying the gravity in his voice. We have come far, but the path ahead is long. Chen smiled warmly at the counselor before continuing. Indeed, which is why I'm pleased to announce the next phase of our technology sharing initiative. Earth is prepared to release the schematics for our gravity manipulation drives to all member worlds. A collective gasp went up from the assembly. Human gravity tech had revolutionized space travel and construction, but until now it had been closely guarded. This technology, Chen explained, will allow for more efficient terraforming, safer mining operations, and faster-than-light travel without the need for massive energy expenditures. It is our hope that this will further accelerate our collective progress and exploration of the galaxy. As excited chatter filled the chamber, a holographic display flickered to life, showing the schematics in question. Scientists and engineers from a dozen species immediately began poring over the details, their eyes wide with wonder. From her place near the back of the hall, Admiral Sarah Zhao watched the proceedings with a mixture of pride and caution. She leaned over to her aide, speaking in a low voice. "Make sure our defense grids are upgraded to the Mark VI standard by the end of the month, just in case." The aide nodded discreetly. Humanity had learned the hard way that peace must be guarded vigilantly. As the technical discussion wound down, Counselor Ilara floated forward, her ethereal form glowing with excitement. "This is a momentous occasion," she proclaimed. "But I believe we can go further. I propose a joint mission, combining the best minds and technologies from all our worlds to explore the uncharted regions beyond the galactic rim." The proposal sent a fresh wave of excitement through the gathering. Chen's eyes sparkled with interest. "An intriguing idea, Counselor. Perhaps it's time we shift our gaze outward to the mysteries that still await us." As the assembly broke into smaller groups to discuss the possibilities, Chen found herself approached by an unexpected figure. A young Zarquin, member of a race that had once been part of the Void Dominion, bowed respectfully. "Chairperson Chen," the alien said, its voice a melodious trill, "on behalf of my people, I wish to express our gratitude. Your policies of reconciliation and rehabilitation have given us a second chance. I never thought we'd be welcomed among the free peoples of the galaxy again." Chen placed a gentle hand on the Zarquin's shoulder. "The past cannot be changed, but the future is ours to shape. Your people have shown remarkable courage in facing your history and choosing a new path." As the Zarquin moved away, visibly moved, Jorax approached Chen. "You continue to surprise us, Madam Chairperson," he said, mandibles clicking in what she had learned was a sign of admiration. "When we first encountered your species, we thought we were unleashing a weapon. Instead, we found teachers, allies, friends." Chen's expression turned thoughtful. "We've all learned much, Counselor. Humanity included. We've had to confront our own capacity for destruction, to find a balance between our strength and our compassion." She gazed out at the assembled delegates, a mix of species that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. "This alliance, this new galactic order, it's not perfect. We still have disagreements, cultural misunderstandings, competing interests. But we're facing them together, as equals. That's a victory greater than any we achieved on the battlefield." As the session began to wind down, plans being made for the Rim exploration mission and a dozen other initiatives, Chen couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. The galaxy had dragged humanity into a war they didn't want, unleashing a power they hadn't understood. But from that crucible of conflict, something remarkable had emerged. The Milky Way was entering a new golden age. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt. The scars of the Void Dominion War would take generations to fully heal, and who knew what awaited them beyond the galactic rim. But for the first time in millennia, the sentient species of the galaxy faced the future not with fear, but with hope and unity. As Chen prepared to bring the session to a close, she allowed herself a small private smile. Humanity had been forced onto the galactic stage against their will. But now, standing here among the stars, it felt like coming home. The next chapter awaits,